I feel like sorrel's not making me feel old. It's just the fact that I don't know, just into my 30s now. I'm realizing that I don't know if you listen to the podcast I had with Cody May, but I referenced white guys being wieners when they get to around my age and a bit older.
I started to hear that part. I haven't finished the Cody May podcast, but I heard the part about the wieners.
So like, that's the thing, man. Like I'm calling people out because that's most of my friends.
Yeah.
But I'm right, like I'm right there. I'm on the wiener doorstep, man. It's like frig. It's not great, but it's just how life's gonna roll. So
Man, it only gets better, right? Just have you got a minivan? Did you get a minivan?
I got rid of that years ago
You got rid of that years ago.
in preparation for this, so I didn't fully commit. I'm scared of commitment, I guess that's what it is.
Hey man, it's all good, brother. Frig. I love that t-shirt or the sweater you got on there.
Got a panda on it too.
Yeah, man. Are you a big fan of Panda?
Yeah, moderate. Moderate panda fan.
Moderate Panda fan.
As much as you can be, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a skateboard sweater, man. I was terrible at skateboarding.
Did you skateboard?
Terrible. Yeah, like me and my buddy Brody did for a couple of years, but honestly, I've never landed a kickflip even to this day.
Really?
And like that's a pretty basic trick. Yeah, it's not like most people. You ask most people, they've landed a kickflip, and I probably spent 1,000 hours on that. Like way too much time.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
What do you got at your brew there? What are you drinking?
Dude, I know this looks really great. It's just water though. It's just a cool glass I got.
That's a freaking cool glass, buddy. India Red. I got a little good old Joshtrainsme classic, man.
Are you doing there's lemon in there for sure.
Salty water, buddy.
Out of the pool or?
Yep. This stuff here. Pool water.
Dude, that looks like it's your branding. What's going on there?
Yeah, I know it's not mine, but right?
It's good.
It's really good. It's basically I wish you would have packaged your idea like 6 years ago of just putting pink salt into water, because that's all that is.
I know. I remember that, eh? We're like, you might as well just claim something that people are already doing and I don't brand it. That's what a lot of things seem to be, eh?
Totally. Like I saw this product on the Rich Roll podcast, so I thought I'd try it.
Yeah.
It's just easy and convenient to take to work, right? So it's pretty good stuff, but it's literally just magnesium salt with like natural flavoring in it.
Yeah,
that's all. I know somebody who's been doing this for a long time and he's not making any money out of it.
Yeah, I know a guy that drinks salt, and it's not intentionally. It's him holding his head underwater too long in the ocean. Yeah. Oh man.
How's life out in Victoria, buddy?
Man, it's good. I had a conversation with a friend I've met out here, so like a newer friend, and we were just talking about kind of the state of the world, man. Like her and I are in pretty similar positions, which is why we just decided to jump on a call. And she's getting involved in training as well, and I'm already a trainer, obviously, and doing everything online. But we just sort of shared some of the loneliness that's occurring, and it's unique to look at, BC, because it's beautiful. You're looking at beautiful trees and the landscape and the environment, the oceans and the mountains. But like ultimately, there's lots of times where it's so easy to feel alone and lonely, both of those things. So definitely going through some loneliness out here with working exclusively online and I'm not vaccinated, right? So I'm not going into places. It's hard.
Oh shit, eh? Yeah. Man, I wish I wasn't vaccinated.
Yeah.
I had to get it. The OPP, it was the only option. If you didn't get vaccinated, they were going to put you on unpaid leave. And given the shit that I've already been through and still in the mix of, I was like, fuck, I just need to get vaccinated. So I did it. I waited until the 11th hour, but I wish I was in your boat. But that's
Yeah.
so you're finding, yeah, oh yeah, 100%.
Hmm.
Because you know, my philosophy has always been like live naturally. Like our body is our health is our natural immunity, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what we put into it is ultimately going to protect us.
Yeah.
So I'm not a big believer in big pharma whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, it's good to hear you say that, especially kind of like now. I knew that about you.
Yeah.
But fuck, man, you're certainly put in a pretty difficult position, right?
Oh yeah. It was like, well, the choice was like, you know, stand up for your values or and not have food on the plate or like, you know, relent, I guess, and you know, eat. So it was like
Yeah.
it's more of Maslow's hierarchy of needs at that point. But for me, like the objective has never changed really. Like if I could ultimately exit said day job, that
Mm-hmm.
would be the objective for sure. So a lot of the things I've put into play now since coming out of this chaos
Mm-hmm.
is to set me up for the future. Like right now, I'm actually sitting in the Airbnb space.
Yeah, dude, that looks like it's got your name written all over it.
Yeah, with the aviation stuff in the back, right?
Just the way it's laid out, like it's clean. It's like I love your style, man. Like the way you set spaces up and down to the detail. I like your style is really good, I think. So I can tell that looks like it does that you're not sitting in a library. You're like that's a space you've created and it's a good backdrop. Yeah.
Thanks, brother. Thanks, brother. Yeah, I'm gonna open the doors by February. I did a few little modifications to this setup. Actually, I'm gonna turn the computer around because you can't. You'll appreciate this. So bear with me for a second.
It's definitely a feature wall for wallpaper, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
100%.
I'm trying to show you
That's a
this.
Witzing classic. Oh, there you go. Look at that.
Who's that? Who's that on the TV over there?
Who's that freaking losing his mind in the dark?
Exactly.
Yeah, seriously, eh?
So I that wall over there is a new addition. We just completed it actually the other day. So,
Yeah,
but it's like a whole. So this is it's a the house is a side split. So the
yeah,
basement gets a lot of natural light because of the way it's designed. But this space was meant to be a living room, and where that wall is was just it was sort of cut in a little bit, and I'm like it doesn't look functional. So it's like,
right.
you know, we need to have something that creates a little bit of intimacy down here. So that's what we did. But like, so that's just one thing. I got a couple other things on the go. And then once they're done, I'm going to flip the switch on and it'll be an operational Airbnb by February.
Perfect. Yeah, let her rip, eh?
Let her rip, brother.
Let her rip, man. So
I
here's
need to come out to Victoria. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, tell me what you're thinking, brother.
well, I'm thinking all sorts of shit, but what I'm going to ask you is for people listening, because some people listening to this will know you and know me. Some people won't, and they don't, frankly, give a shit about either one of us, and that's okay. But
Yep.
yeah, that's true.
Yep. That's true.
I'm gonna ask you two questions, but I want to know. Give me your headspace. So we gotta fill people in on the 24 hours of isolation challenge. So I'm gonna get you to do that first, and then I'm gonna ask you where your headspace is now since. So 24 hours of isolation. This is a challenge we put together just over 2 years ago. It took place over 2 years ago. You're good at speaking about that. You want to give people a rundown?
Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. I can definitely do that.
Well,
You
cheers,
want me to
man.
do that right? Yeah, cheers, buddy.
Yeah.
Virtual.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, buddy.
Yeah, I'd say
I freaking love it, man.
I'd say just go for it. Yeah, let her rip.
Let
Tear it
her
up.
rip. You want me to jump into it right now?
Yeah, I think with maybe the context of that challenge, then we can kind of dismantle things. Because to me, the reason I would bring this up as kind of as a standstill component is because there was a lead up to that, then there was this event, and then there was also like an off ramp and a whole lot that's happened since, which takes us to today. and there's been a lot of change, but I kind of use that as at least I'm using that as a bit of a timestamp to differentiate before and after.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Okay, buddy. I could do that, brother.
yeah.
Yeah, man. How's the volume sound on this thing? Does it sound all right?
Yeah, I can hear you well, and it sounds clear. What mic are you rocking? Is that the is it
That's
the
the
same?
Sherry, buddy.
It's the same gear,
Same one.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, same gear. It's the Sherry.
I went out and bought this Yeti, right? Just a black edition.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I think we tried
we
that
did.
once before, did we?
we did. I don't remember why we didn't go with it though. I'm guessing it didn't. Honestly, probably knowing us, it didn't look cool enough.
Probably.
So that might be it. Yeah. Yeah, that's seriously it. It sounds decent knowing it was like $200. Apparently, again, this is me in the dad zone. Like I went in, I was with Sorrel going into this store. There was like 8 options for Yeti mics. I'm like, dude, I don't know. Like, what is the friggin' difference? One's black, one's gray, one's blue. And I bought some friggin' limited edition gamer mic, and I didn't even know. So sure, load her up.
That's freaking awesome, dude. I love
That's what's
it.
happening.
Fucking cool. I love it, dude. All right, man. Well, I'll jump into the locked and loaded stuff.
You want to do
There
it?
you go. Yeah, here we go, buddy. It's been some time, but yeah, I'm just gonna go back to the start because you and I were introduced by a mutual friend of ours. Coincidentally, I think it was maybe just accidental that we got introduced, and
I think so.
happened to, yeah, man. Like I think Craig knew that we were two guys that had similar operating styles, and he teed it up for us, and we got connected, and it was I think it was a beautiful introduction because we learned a lot about different training modalities and what each of us had as beliefs and how we like to approach things, and our relationship started from this really natural place of two guys that just love to train hard and do really tough shit. And
Yeah.
if I look back at the evolution of where we came from, we love to do tough shit and we love to inspire other people to do tough shit. It was really that simple. And naturally, because of the type of individuals that we are, we fed off of each other's excitement when it came to upping the ante each time. And each time it just got a little crazier.
Yeah.
I was recently looking back at some old footage, like the very first time we ever took to Facebook for a workout.
Yeah.
And we were two of us couldn't even figure out how to fit our heads inside the camera to record a whiteboard workout.
Yeah.
It was like, to reference your discussion with Cody May about being in the wiener zone.
Yeah.
There's two dudes that were well into the wiener zone at that particular time.
Yeah.
So, from there, we just gradually took the excitement that we had about creating these challenges and tried to up the ante each time. And from there, obviously the history, it evolved into this concept called the Whiteboard Project, where we had these ambitions to create a media and events company and really inspire people to live a healthier life. And in conjunction with doing that, we launched a podcast, and then we started spitballing on ideas that we had already previously baked. In fact, the idea for Locked and Loaded really started with your suggestion of like, hey, wouldn't it be a total mind fuck if we could put 2 treadmills each in a separate room, take the clocks off the wall and turn off the lights and race each other? And that's where it started from. And then you had this, it's your fault. I'll blame you for basically saying, hey, we need to sign up for an ultra. I still remember it. We were in the kitchen at my place.
Yeah, in Peterborough.
Yeah, in Peterborough. And you said, you know what, we need to do an ultra. And neither of us had any any long mileage under our belt. And this was in about January. And we just put our money where our mouth was and said, okay, we're going to sign up for an ultra. This is in 2018. So we're sitting at the kitchen table, and we sign up for the ultra at Bear Mountain sometime in January. And we just said, we're going for it.
Yeah, that was sick.
It was pretty sick, dude. And
yeah, that was good.
So that kind of opened Pandora's box, I think, because when we went to Bear Mountain in early May, we were driving down, long drive, 9 hours, two dudes, just shooting the shit about all kinds of stuff, listening to great tunes on the way down.
Yeah.
Right. It's when we discovered that I didn't have a really good singing voice.
Took that long, eh?
Yeah, it took that long.
40 years.
We're rolling into New York, and Josh, you're like, man, you got some good tunes, eh? Your voice is like. But on that drive down, we started feeding off this idea of like, we should do this challenge of running in the dark and racing each other. And we just started spitballing, like, how do we make this more difficult? Putting two treadmills in a room doesn't seem difficult enough. And so we spitballed to the point where we said, okay, we're going to do it in a shipping container. We're going to need a non-motorized treadmill. We're going to remove the environment, basically, no light, no sound, no biometric feedback. And we're going to put two treadmills in the center of Peterborough, and we're just going to go for it.
Yeah.
And we're going to live cast it on our iPhone 1s.
On our Facebook account. I remember too, a preliminary thing while we were in your kitchen, we were thinking, at least I was thinking, I think you were too. We talked about getting the shipping containers in your backyard.
Yes. Yeah.
Dude, I don't even think you could fit a shipping container beside your house to get in the backyard. So right off the hop, there were some major logistical issues.
Yeah, I think the next door neighbor, Scotty Thompson, would have had some issues with that.
Yeah. Dude, you mind if we rip up your lawn? We got to park a shipping container in the back to run in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No kidding, eh? What the hell is this?
Yeah, dude. So you know what? You know what's kind of cool about that, John, is we had that idea. So we had this idea to do an ultra, which is an extreme challenge. Like, lots of people have done them, but it's still a pretty extreme challenge. Like, if you've never done one, it's really hard to run more than 42K. We chose a particularly tough ultra, I think, in like the confines of ultras. Like, it's tons of elevation and it's on trail, which is much harder. And it's 50K. There was a 50 mile or two.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking, as you're saying this back to me, I'm getting all this nostalgia, right? Reliving it. And I'm like, we chose to level up the challenge by tenfold before we even did the first challenge.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You're either really, really naive or really crazy. I don't know which is the case, but yeah, we had leveled up.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. So
this is what I mean, right? Where we it's not a good situation for the two of us to be in a room spitballing about hard things to do, because we just keep adding elements to it. It just keeps ratcheting up.
Yeah, you can always add more zeros on, 100,000. Okay, 10,000. Like, dude, that one workout we created, and then jump back in. We created that one challenge at Haroldtown, right?
Yeah. So I forget what we called that. Do you remember what the name of that was?
Oh, it was something like kind of a silly name, like Harry Nuts or something stupid. Was it something like that, or like?
Oh, the Big Harry. Was it the Big
Big Harry? The Big Harry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was, man. The Big Harry 8-hour fucking 20,000 rep challenge. Yeah, good luck.
It was an AMRAP, right? It was
an 8 or 9 hour AMRAP.
And so nobody will appreciate this because they don't really know, but like we did one round.
Yeah.
And we were completely gassed.
Oh yeah, dude. I remember we booked off a Monday. Like, I booked a day off work because, I mean, it was 8 hours of workouts. It's, it's not fitting in after work. That is your work day. So we book it off work. We have it written down on paper. And I remember in the kitchen, it goes something along the lines of like shitload of pull-ups, shitload of burpees, and then like a 2K trail run, then like burpees, squats, and then that trail run with a weighted vest on. I don't know what it was,
That's
20,
right.
30 pounds, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
It was a pain in the ass. Like that was brutal. And then it kind of repeated like that. But at one point there was like in between rounds, it was like 100 burpees with like 100 push-ups and then 100 more squats. Like, so the volume was just like ridiculous. Like, and you and I both got hurt on that. Like, like neither one of us finished it being like, that was a perfect amount of volume. Like,
no.
Yeah.
That is, I actually feel nervous talking about this because somehow I feel like we're going to manifest this and do it at some point down the road. It's unfinished business. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had been thinking about this workout in preparation for today. And I remember I was, coming out of that thinking, this is the worst fucking workout I've ever done in my life. Like I was so destroyed. Yeah, man.
Yeah. That was a real mind fuck. It was a really ridiculous workout. But anyway, that ended up being a workout for us. We thought about it as a competition. We never even ended up executing it, but we trialed it, and that's where we left it.
Absolutely.
So this is sort of some of the ideas that you and I have come up with and fulfilled all of them, at least in the way that you and I execute the workout. Whether it turns into anything beyond that, that's a small example. Absolutely. So we're in the car on the way to this ultra, and I'm just picking up where we left off. We've thought of this idea.
Yeah. So, basically we had this back of the napkin idea where, we were going to execute this event, but we hadn't really thought through like all the components of what it would take to get this off the ground. We knew we needed a shipping container. We knew we needed a non-motorized treadmill to make this logistically possible. So that's effectively where we started. We started looking at shipping container options locally. And then we figured out where we were going to get a non-motorized treadmill. And it was you that had the idea of getting a true form runner. So we just did a quick little Google search, found a contact name for Jeff Vernon. We emailed him, and within a few minutes, he had emailed us back. And I don't have the email in front of me, but I think it went along the lines of like, you guys are nuts.
Yeah.
And it also said, I'm in. And
yeah.
And so within very short order, we had essentially our first sponsor in true form.
Like 7 minutes.
Ended up getting on 7 minutes. It was literally like
almost immediate.
Very quick. Yeah, it's like basically like we set this thing off. I think, at least in my head, I don't know what you were thinking, but at least in my head, I was thinking like, this will be something that we'll hear back in like a week or 2 weeks. We'll probably have to like pressure him to figure out whether or not they want to do this.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting an immediate response. And then we were on the phone with him later that day.
Yeah.
And the phone conversation turned into almost like a 2-hour conversation about like, it went from literally like a napkin to like us flushing out the concept on the phone with Jeff Vernon.
Yeah.
I was like, this is pretty surreal.
Yeah, dude. It's really interesting because it seems like it's not all that often where things go like 0 to 100 in a couple minutes with an extreme idea.
Totally.
I think we kind of got lucky that you and I were kind of riding on the same high wavelength of like, this is crazy, but we're both going to do it, and we're both going to depend on each other to complete it. Absolutely. In a different amount. You obviously did a shitload more work by the end of it, but having Jeff Vernon call and say, that's crazy, but I'm also in, and I can contribute a huge piece to that. And that is, these non-motorized treadmills that you guys want to run on. I own the company. Like, that was pretty massive to be like, oh, okay, great.
Yeah, it's huge. I honestly think without Jeff, I mean, there's so many parts of this story where there were so many people who played a role. Without any one of them, they never get to where they are.
Mm-hmm.
certainly without us taking the trip to New York, we don't actually have the executional idea that we ultimately came up with. Without us booking that trip to New York, we don't actually go to New York. So without your push to book an ultra, we're not actually sitting on the locked and loaded that year. Without Jeff saying, let's do this, we don't actually have true form runners. I'm sure we would have figured out a way to get treadmills, but like it may not have ended up being that event. Yeah, there's just so many parts, right? Like, without Cody May and Studio PTBO and Pavel DeVollet and his production crew, Matt Wilder,
Scott Williamson.
Yeah, Scott Williamson, Rob, like all those guys played such a significant role. Without Dave Bolch from We Do Sport, without Philip Nelson from Nelco Media, without Tosh, Brian John Tosh from Boulder, Colorado, helping us connect with Zach Evanesh and Joe DeSena from Spartan. Without any of those pieces, like none of this actually takes place. I think I said it at one point when we were at the event, when Joe approached us at the 11th hour and said, "Hey guys, not to throw a curveball into anything, not that this is complex enough, but I've got this athlete that wants to participate, Isaiah Vidal." And at that point, it's like so many people have said yes to so many different levels of insanity that how do you say no at that point, right? So I know for sure that, not to get ahead of myself, but I know for sure the fact that we had an adversity challenge before we started the adversity challenge. So I was already baked before we went into the container, right? There's just it's incredible, dude. But I think it's
that is wild, man. I think we need to post I'll be sharing this stuff. We'll post a link so that people can watch some of that stuff. Cause like you said, without so many people, it would have just been two guys running in a backyard. And like, who cares about that? And that's cool for us. But because of like a lot of people's work and your follow through on a lot of this, it ended up being, so let's jump into this. So it ended up being a 24-hour challenge where there was 4 guys, each in a separate shipping container that was blacked out with its own custom HVAC in there. So we didn't overheat and die, which you borderline did anyway.
Pretty much.
We each had a non-motorized true form treadmill or running machine with the biometric data custom disc segmented from the unit so that we couldn't see our distance, our time, our speed. That was removed and faced outward on the unit so that production team could keep track of how we were doing. It was totally blacked out. We weren't allowed music. We weren't allowed watches. We weren't allowed any source of light. And we had kitty litter in a Home Depot bucket for shit. And we had the proper, what we thought to be proper provisions going into it, which we really didn't know, especially you and I. And we run for as often out of the 24 hours as we can. And as soon as 24 hours is up, we hear a knock and a door open.
Yeah. That's it. That's it in a nutshell, man. It's pretty wild to actually think that we did that. Honestly, I have to watch some of the stuff once in a while to remind myself that we actually did that. Because I'm often asked, like, when people realize that that's something that we did, I'm often asked from just people that I know within different sports segments, like, what was it like? And I'm like, man, it was just, it's almost surreal to think that we pulled that friggin' thing off.
Yeah. It's truly incredible, man. Like right now I'm reliving some of the experience. Like I can tell you are too, right? Because you don't think about certain events you did all the time. But
no, absolutely no, and that's the thing. It's like there was so much that went into that experience, and it was such a different experience from from an adversity standpoint, from an endurance standpoint, from a mental toughness standpoint, that it's just one of those things that I hate to live in the past. Like I'm not, and I know you're not like this either. It's, I hate to live in the past and relive like glory days and rethink about stuff that I've already done. But it was a pretty significant event and accomplishment for all of us who came through that experience. And it's pretty wild. Like, and it was the only time this had ever been executed.
Yeah, as a first, it's never, like, we were in contact with Guinness at one point because it was such a unique extreme challenge, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna jump ships. So from where you were at mindset wise, tell me where you were at in terms of, sort of give me like an overview of who you were as a person pre 24 hours of isolation, locked and loaded. This is the event we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Describe who John Witzing was, or what was happening in life.
Yeah, I on the surface, it probably appeared like I was a guy that had all of his shit together, and a guy that did hard, tough stuff, both in endurance and in extreme sports. But under the surface, there was a lot of things going on. Obviously, this because we're buddies, but personal life was obviously not really a solid foundation. And I think I masked a lot of the stuff that was going on in my personal life through these other outlets. And where I am post the locked and loaded, and even post the last couple of years, where I am today as a person is someone who's much more grounded in the reality that you absolutely have to deal with the personal side of your life to make sure that there's a healthy foundation for you to be able to do the things that you love to do in the other areas of your life. So they're kind of like symbiotic. Before, I would have just like said, okay, you know what, I don't have time to deal with this. I'm just going to go and do these other things and ignore whatever the problems are. Now I'm much more like, no, we need to deal with like the real life stuff. And we still need to explore these other areas, but they both feed off of each other. You can't do one without the other. Yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So to break apart that nut a little bit, what's an example? Because I feel like probably now more than ever, people need connection. And I've been sort of working on this thought I have now, at least, is that vulnerability is at least the most important, if not like one of the sole ways to connect. So if it takes vulnerability to say like, this is what I'm going through.
Yeah.
So what were you going through? Is there anything you feel like you can share on that?
Yeah, I'll share some things at a personal level without necessarily going into some of the nitty gritty, just because of
confidentiality and
there's still confidentiality. But so it's no secret that I was previously married. I went through.
Holy shit, dude! Seriously?
Yeah, no kidding, eh? You've been keeping that a secret this whole time. I knew there was something about you. So yeah, I mean, I went through a divorce. I have two children who are now in a situation of having, two parents that obviously no longer live together. That in and of itself was a very significant thing to go through in life. And that alone would be enough. But I had a lot more than just that piece going on. If I knew then what I know now, I would have taken the time to really just get comfortable being alone and being a single father and spending time with my children and focused on them and our household and our family and the things we wanted to do together. That is certainly one of the key takeaways I've had from the last several years, where I should have spent time really getting comfortable knowing myself, not knowing the issues that existed in my marriage with myself. And I'm not speaking about my partner, not knowing the issues that existed with myself in that marriage. I immediately gravitated to another relationship. And so I saw that relationship as being the relationship that was the answer to the things I thought I was lacking in my marriage. And that's a slippery slope. I believe if you don't take the time in a crisis to really unpack what's happened. And what I mean by that is the parts that you own as an individual. Again, this isn't about like, what my partner did in my marriage. This is about what I needed to develop as a person and what I needed to learn from that experience about the things that were truly important to me. So had I taken that time, I wouldn't be where I am today with the situation that eventually unfolded, is because I saw in this new partner all the answers I thought I was lacking, but I still really didn't know what was important for me. And I didn't stand up for the values that I now know are really important to me, that I would never allow to be compromised again.
Right.
But I allowed my judgment to be clouded by seeing this person as the answer to all my problems. And that was a slippery slope because that person wasn't a very good person. And I'm not going to get into the details, and this isn't going to be a bashing episode on them.
Yeah, totally.
But certainly, I can call a spade a spade. That person was not a good person and did a lot of deceptive things in my life and created a lot of controversy with the relationships that I had in my life, even including you and I. So
100%.
Absolutely. I mean, that firsthand. So this individual really was not a bad person, but I didn't see that person for who they were because I hadn't done the work to know what was really important for myself. It's only when the relationship with that person ended, I was forced into a situation where I had a choice of, I could have done the same thing, gone and found a partner right away and not be lonely and not sit with myself. Or I could have done the opposite, which is what I ended up doing, which is going completely isolating myself from essentially everyone. I call it working in the dark. I did all the work, all the self-development work in the dark. I really got down to the brass tacks of who I am, what I'm about, what I stand for, what's important to me. And I wanted to make sure that that platform was completely stable, that foundation was completely stable before I took on anything else in my life. And it's only because I took that time to focus on doing the work within that I was able to then catapult myself to where I am today, which is actually getting ready to launch my own coaching business officially, launch my own, essentially branded stuff that essentially has been in the works for years between the stuff that we've collaborated on and other areas of life. But I've done the work to get to a stage where I feel confident to launch this stuff now because I know who I am and I know what's important and I know what it took to come through that. But being raw and real and vulnerable, I was in a situation where I essentially hadn't done the important work of really developing myself.
So, dude, thanks for sharing that. This is like literally part of the reason I started doing a podcast again was like, this is what it is, to connect with people more. So this is you and I connecting, and hopefully with some of the elements of actually being vulnerable. It's one thing to say you're being vulnerable, but if you're not truthfully expressing some of the deeper layers, then I sort of argue that it may not be vulnerable. So to me, from people hearing something like that, they're going to be able to connect with you and I, or, you a lot more and pick out some of these, like these real elements of what it is to be a what it is to be a fucking athlete that's going through a bunch of hard shit, that can perform at a really high level, but still have some issues that they need to work on. And I just want to say, like, thank you for sharing that stuff, because I think it's important to name it. And I like this concept of this this working in the dark. A term that comes up for me that I've heard sort of recently is shadow work. And where that comes up is from what I've heard, it's in more of a group setting. So I'm part of this men's group, and part of what it is shadow work, and it's essentially like the guys in the group, you know, holding the mirror against you, and so you're looking at yourself and they're reflecting it back. You know, Goggins calls it the accountability mirror, the shadow work, working in the dark. It sounds all very, very similar in that it's like, get, as you said, sort of get to the root so that you can work on this other shit. But if you don't get to the root, like, things are going to compile and become dysfunctional. And
100%. It's interesting because I think the container has become a metaphor for how I got through all of the shit that was going on in my life. In that container, we were locked in for 24 hours with our thoughts and our emotions and this objective of putting as many miles on the true form as we could. That's sort of like life, right? Life is you show up and you're there with your thoughts and your emotions, and you've got to put as much mileage on the body as you can before the clock expires. But if all we do is put one foot in front of the other and not actually take the time to reflect on the stuff that we need to work on, we're going to get to the end of the end of the experience not having really fully stepped into who we are. And so, you know, I couldn't have known that at the time when we did the Locked and Loaded challenge. But now, having come to the other side of the experience I've been through over the last several years, I realize that the only way that I can step into who I am is by looking inward and making sense of what's truly important to me. And I liked your first podcast. I listened to it, and you talk about creating a podcast based on values. And so you talk about grit, right? And being vulnerable. And I like the fact that you've had this reflection to figure out what's really important to not just the podcast, but these are obviously values that are important to you as an individual. And I think it's important to be able to do anything effectively in your life. You need to truly know who you are. You need to set the stage of like, this is the foundation of what I'm going to grow from.
yeah, I appreciate that, man. And I can say vulnerably, though, those three things came to mind pretty easily for me. I was pretty connected with those. I thought it was important to be vulnerable. I was sick of having like small talk, or just not truly getting to the root, right? And that's a lot of the way the world is. So I'm learning to play the game a little bit, but vulnerability needs to be a piece for people to connect, I think. I've taken a lot from Brene Brown. She speaks about, you know, courage and vulnerability a lot. And I've taken a lot from from lived experience now with therapy and men's work, and just having people hear each other and feeling held and supported, and learning that the shadow work is important. And I want to make sure that I get your idea right, so that I don't just phrase it as something that I know. But when you say doing, what did you say? Doing the work in the dark?
Yes, doing the work in the dark.
I think that term's awesome. I'm going to see that in a book. I know that coming up. I can just tell it's going to be one of those ideas you have. I'm looking forward to that. So this idea of doing work in the dark, does that essentially mean reflection, or does that mean like healing on your own?
It means both. It means reflection and healing on your own. And I would add to that, it's healing, it's it's reflection, and it's also creating a vision for what it looks like to step into the light. And quite frankly, I'll just give him a little plug. I haven't talked to Tosh since last year. I spoke to him once last year. That guy, as you know, just from being around him, he's got a lot. He's a man of few words, but when he speaks, he has like the most fucking epic, poignant things that you should take note of. Mm-hmm. And so in the beginning, when I was going through the real tragedy and crisis that I've gone through in the last 2 years, he said to me, he just sent me a text, and all it said was, quit looking in the dark because there ain't no light there. That's verbatim what he said to me. I thought that was such an interesting way of framing up adversity and crisis. But I also thought it was important for me to spend time in the dark. And I'm using that as a metaphor because it's the place I went. It's the place I went to find solitude, to be with my own thoughts, my own emotions, and to really unpack the shit that I had been through and how I ended up in that position in the first place, and how I was going to make sure that that never happened again. I think there's a lot of things that could happen in a situation where you go through crisis. So calling a spade, I went through a significant betrayal from somebody that I had given all my trust to, and learned in the end that trust was misplaced, and that person took advantage of all the things that I gave to them. And when you come out of that experience, you're left wondering, like, how did this happen? Like, how did I get to that stage? And it would be easy to start to shut yourself down. It would be easy to say, I don't want anything to do with another partner ever in my life. But what advantage do you have by isolating yourself to the point that you shut yourself off from the world?
Yeah.
Whether you believe in God or a creator or just spirituality or no God at all, we were all put here in this lifetime to do something significant with the talents and abilities that we have. So any one of us playing small in the world doesn't serve the purpose for what we were put here to do. So if you come out of a negative situation, a crisis, a very adverse moment, and you shut yourself off from the world completely, well, then you're only sabotaging your own success. So I looked at it as, okay, I'm going to spend some time in the dark. I'm going to spend some time in solitude, really working on myself. And then I'm going to step into the light. And so that's essentially where I got to. I got to a point where I started doing the things that I knew I needed to do to walk towards the point where, I'm not the same guy I was walking into that container. I can tell you that, to answer that question.
You have completely different glasses, number one. So that's the biggest takeaway. No, dude, I'm proud of that, man. That's big, man. That's really, like, from just a human hearing another human talk about their growth. That's really great.
Oh, thanks, buddy. I appreciate that.
What types of things were you actually doing in order to kind of challenge yourself and to, take the ownership on, like, this is the shit I need to get familiar with. These are the things I'm going to do to try to know myself better, and to, like, whatever you want to call it, like doing the work in the dark. What was that work, or what were the outlets for that, the activities?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'll be as vulnerable as I possibly can on this episode with you, buddy.
Thanks, man.
I think it's important for people to hear, and I have no issues talking about the experience in that regard. But when you've placed your belief in someone else and it's shattered, and again, I'm not going to get into the specifics, but when it's shattered and your concept of what existed is completely exploded because what ends up appearing is something you didn't expect. At least in my case, that self-belief and that self-confidence who I thought I was as a person was completely evaporated. It was completely gone. I had in the early days some people that said to me, like, where's the person that's strong and tough and, who was raised to be a fighter and to overcome, where's that person? And I would sit and think to myself, I don't even know who that guy is. Yes, I'd been this guy that had done Iron Man and Locked and Loaded and other tough shit throughout his lifetime, but I didn't know who that guy was. So the real question was, how come I didn't know who that guy was? How come I'm going to fight and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that?
Hey, John,
That wasn't the answer.
It just froze for a sec on my side, so I'll cut the video, but back up like 10 seconds and then I'll try to blend it, just because that sounds like a pretty key moment to what you're saying.
Yeah. So I had people in my life saying, where's the person that is tough, that, just dusts himself off, that attacks challenge, that fights, and I would sit there and think to myself, I just don't know who that person is. And then I would ask myself, like, why don't I know who that person is? Why am I disconnected from that person? I mean, the guy that I think I know cerebrally is a guy that's done Iron Man and Locked and Loaded and tough, hard shit. But why can't I just pick myself up and move on? So there was obviously a disconnect with how people saw me and how I felt in that particular moment. The person that people thought I was and the person that I at least knew conceptually was completely evaporated. I didn't feel like that guy. And so my first order of action, and really I owe this to a great friend, he's more like a brother, just like yourself. He invited me to come out west. And so I hopped on a plane and I headed out west. I went out west and I spent a couple of weeks out in Alberta, just being around him and his family. And I think he knows me well enough, just like you do. If it would be no different if you and I were doing something. He knew me well enough to know that he needed to push me a little bit to get me back into scenarios where I was re-engaging with the things that I had done in the past. So that's what we were doing, but none of it was working. None of it was actually triggering any sort of emotional response for me. I was just completely numb. I didn't find the same satisfaction from doing those things. Until one particular day for Christmas, because all of this happens prior to Christmas in 2019. For Christmas, he had bought myself and himself a day of fat biking up in Canmore. And so we go out, we get the mountain bikes, and we're fat biking in Canmore, which is a beautiful area. The scenery is epic. Now living out west, it's like, man, you're in Canmore. Mountains, just beautiful.
Yeah, Canmore is unreal. Yeah.
Oh, so amazing there. And so I just wasn't getting jazzed up about it. We spent the whole day riding. It wasn't until the very end of the day, we started at elevation because of where the Canmore Center is, where the cross-country ski track is. So we had rode down into like Canmore proper, into the village. Well, that climb, as you know, because you've been there, is a pretty long climb uphill back to that village. So we started biking back up to the Canmore Center. And he had been leading the out front all day. He'd been doing all the pulling. I just was behind him on his wheel, not really putting any work into the effort that day. But it was windy going back up the mountain. And so I said, you know what, I'll just go out in front. I pulled out in front of him and I started to pull for us. And it was like, I could literally visualize a key switching in my head. And I just put my head down and I went into my quiet place and I just started turning over the pedals. And I just started, without even knowing it, I started to pull away from him. And I got to the spot where we had parked about 10 minutes ahead of my buddy Jay. And when he arrived at the parking lot, he was like, man, you still got it. Like, this is huge. And the reason why he was saying that is because I had not been on a bike since prior to Locked and Loaded. I had moved from Peterborough to London and I hadn't even unpacked my bike. Life had become so miserable and so horrible with the person I was with. I had given up every piece of myself in the process to satisfy this one individual. I gave up my friends. I gave up my kids. I gave up my family. I gave up my pursuits. I had not done anything. My entire world evolved around doing what she wanted. So I hadn't been on a bike, and that was the first time I had been on a bike. So that's why he was so like, you still got it. I left to come back to Ontario the next day, and I caught a early morning flight. I think I was at the airport. I was there around 4 a.m. I caught the first flight out of Calgary. The first thing I did when I got back to Ontario, I unpacked my bike, I set up the trainer, and I got down to business, and I did this epic, long, multi-hour ride. I just put the bike on the trainer and I just rode. And it was like at that particular point where I knew that the answer was partly just putting myself back into difficult shit. Just that to me is therapy. I learned something really important from the container, or being in the container post Locked and Loaded, is that I never made any sounds inside the container. Like, I think Tosh and maybe you, I don't know about Isaiah, you might have like been more like vocal with your like motivation, your chants and stuff throughout the experience. I never said a peep. I was just like,
yeah,
I
fucking
go
mouse in there.
inward.
Yeah.
Literally, man. So there's something about that I knew I just needed to go to work and just be in that environment by myself. And that was the first key to getting over stuff.
Dude, I gotta pause you for a second. Like, dude, that's fucking incredible. I was getting goosebumps there, man.
It's awesome.
That's a really, really cool moment to share.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah.
Oh, because I'm right there with you. Like, I'm on the bike behind Jay in that story. And I'm like, and then I see it's probably a little different me hearing this story because I know the kind of guy you are. But like, I'm hearing that and I'm like, this guy just needs to, like, eventually he'll go again. Like, you just put him in the environment. Oh, that's fucking awesome.
Well, you do have a front row seat to that, because I can see that you're visualizing it, and you would know from one other experience where I showed up at Haroldtown with you.
Oh my God, man. Brutal run.
And I said, yeah, we'll just start out with like a quick, easy pace.
Oh man, this is my recap, and then jump back into your story, because this is really, really great. We show up to Haroldtown, which is this great, very accessible trail system in Peterborough, on the outskirts of Peterborough. And I think you maybe introduced me to it. I think you were running there a lot. And
awesome.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Someone did. Somehow I got there. And we had been running for a decent chunk of time and doing these workouts. And I remember showing up one time. I could tell you were pretty pissed, like you were emotional, but you were sort of, withheld or sort of constrained a little bit. So I remember you were like, yeah. So I said, what's the plan today? And you're like, we're just going to start out easy and then we'll go from there. And I don't remember what the run was. Not anything crazy, maybe fucking 10K or something. And I remember being like, okay, like just getting there, like putting my shoes on. And then you were basically like, okay. And dude, you ran faster than I've ever ran on a trail. And that was your warm up. So I'm just saying, I'm like, what the hell has gotten into this guy, man? I'm like, I can't even keep up with this guy and I'm just starting. Like, so that was totally a time where I'm like, I'm not even here right now. This is his fucking training playground right now, where he's doing this shit and he's processing all this stuff. And I just happen to also be here trying to fucking stay within vision of this guy on this trail. And I could totally tell him like, this guy's batting some shit around in his head. I just got to try to keep up. Crazy run, way too fast. No warm up.
No warm up.
The way she goes. The way she goes.
Hey.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously. All right. You ready?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Truthfully, I don't know. Yeah.
That's right, buddy. Oh my gosh.
Crazy.
It's so funny. Yeah. So for sure you could appreciate the story with the bike because of that reason. And it very much is like a moment like that. But obviously the crisis that I had gone through leading up to this fat bike experience is really significant. So from there, really, I put myself back into those physical challenges. I knew the first key to reclaiming sovereignty was to do the things that you love. And so what did I love? I love my children and I love doing hard shit. And in those early days, I really couldn't control anything else. All I could control is the mindset I showed up with every day, the attitude I had, and the actions I took, which I invested in my kids and my own personal health and development. That was it. And the cool thing is when you do something as simple as that, you start to create these little victories or this little like what I call neural networks and, rewiring the attic, as we would say, starting to rewire the attic because you have these little victories that are starting to stack up. And those little victories lead to a few more little victories. And each time you add to the victory pile, you start to feel more confident and your self-belief starts to grow. And then you start to stretch yourself in different ways. So of course I had done like journaling. I had done therapy, counseling, just to make sure that I worked with somebody who I could trust to unpack the patterns of the past and really get to the root cause of like, why did I do things like this? Why did I trust somebody like my previous partner? Why did I allow that to happen? I could sit here all day long and say, here's the laundry list of things that person did, which are undeniably horrible things to do to somebody else. But the real question ultimately is, why did I allow that to happen? What was it about me that allowed that to manifest in my life? So I made sure that I had counseling as a component of what I was doing. Journaling was a component of what I was doing, but spending time with my kids and doing the athletic things that I did, those two things allowed me to really establish the knowledge I have today about why I allowed the things to manifest the way they did in my life, what's truly important to me, like what's the non-negotiable shit that I will not cave on. And it doesn't matter who you are. If you're coming after those things, I will be a warrior and I will defend. That's the bottom line. This is the safe space and nothing gets inside that house. So from there, I just continue to keep putting myself in that cycle of that rinse, repeat, just rinse, wash, repeat. I got to a stage where I had other goals on the list where I finally felt confident to like retackle them. So one of the things I had given up on over the previous 2 summers was skydiving. I had over the 2-year period, I think collectively I had about 15 skydives. So one of the other environments I put myself back into was skydiving. And that first summer of 2020, I went all in and I ended up, I packed so much into that season, dude. It's crazy because I ended up getting my level 1 coaching rating in skydiving. I got
in Montreal. You did it? Did you go to Montreal?
Actually, no, I haven't been to Montreal since living in Peterborough, and just accessibility wise, like Toronto is closer for me. So I found a new drop zone. Yeah, I found a new drop zone and really have made a home there at Skydive Toronto. Great family there, great crew. So I got my coach rating with Skydive Toronto. I also got my instructor rating that summer as well. So there's multiple instructor ratings you can get, but I got one of my first instructor ratings that summer was with Skydive Toronto. And yeah, so I kind of opened up like this new aspect, and putting myself into instructing and coaching allowed me to transform myself and begin to step into the thing I think I was ultimately always going towards, which is I've been asked, you know this firsthand, like I've been asked to be a coach in my life and I've always shied away from it. I've always said, nah, that's not me. Like I'll refer you to Josh, or I'll refer you to Jay, or I'll refer you to Paul. Like there are people that I trust that I would just say, like, go talk to one of these guys because I trust them. I rely on their advice and input into my life. So that's who you should go to.
Right.
I've always shied away from the idea of being a coach. But when I took that leap of stepping into the skydiving coach role and instructor role, I realized, like, okay, this is something I actually enjoy. And I really enjoy investing in other people. And I got to a place where I felt like I could start to give back to people even beyond the sport of skydiving. So in 2021, to kick off 2021, I just opened up this training journal. I've always kept a training journal. It's always been a part of my regular athletic life. And I thought, you know what? I had a number of people in 2020 asking me to coach them one-on-one. A few of them I helped. And I said, you know what? I don't want to do that. I'm not a one-on-one guy at this stage in my life. Like if you want to see who I am, I'll just open up my training journal. And so I opened up my training journal and I said, this is what I'm going to do to kick off 2021. I'm going to work out for 110 days straight. That's it. Adversity challenge. Challenge number 1, wrap your mind around working out for 110 days straight. Period. I created this Google Doc. People who asked for the access, I gave them the access to it. And basically every night I wrote a workout, much like we would do with the whiteboard workouts. Every day it's wipe the slate clean, new workout that you don't need a gym for, you don't need equipment for, you don't need to be indoors for, you can do pretty much anywhere you want to go.
Yeah.
And in conjunction with those workouts, I was writing like the insights behind why I do the things I do, or at least the lessons that should be learned from doing those things. And so then at the end of the 110 days, I got to this place where it's like, oh, I just created like a 110-day program without even really intentionally seeking to do that. All I wanted to do was like help inspire other people to get fit and take control of their health. And so fast forward to where we are right now, present day, I've packed a lot of personal development into 2 years. And I created this content almost haphazardly by accident. So I packaged it up into what I call Project 110, which is a 110-day personal development program that includes 110 days of workouts, where you work out for 110 days consecutively. The materials delivered to your inbox day to day, and includes 10 group coaching calls where I dissect different lessons related to personal growth. So there's a workbook that goes along with the coaching program. And basically the workbook takes an individual through a series of exercises that helps them self-reflect on themselves to develop their own blueprint for resiliency, so that they can overcome whatever challenges that they may be going through in their life, or achieve the goals that they've put off on the back burner and haven't decided to do for one reason or another, so that they can finally kind of move forward in the direction that they want to go in. And all of those lessons are things that aren't just lessons that are learned in the last 2 years. Really, like some of them, one chapter, I'd sent you some of the stuff, but like one chapter is called Concrete Wall Principle, right? Like, I mean, that's something that comes from a place where, from Ironman training years ago, right? So, I think, in a nutshell, those were the steps. I mean, at a high level, the steps were just like being surrounded by people that knew me, that put me back into the fire, that allowed that key to go off, and then taking it from there and knowing that I held the answer to moving forward in a positive way. And I focused on the things that really mattered. And the things that really mattered were my children and my own health and the people I really trusted in my inner circle. And here
Yeah,
we are.
dude. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I appreciate the specifics. I feel like far too often, at least what I'm exposed to, is just the generalization of things. And like, I'm really interested to see what people are actually doing. So like, when you say you're journaling, it's like, well, what frame, what reference are you using when you're journaling? Because there's 30 types of journal. There's so many types of journaling that you can do. And then when you're talking about having these conversations with people, it's like, I like to analyze the shit out of things in that way.
Yeah.
So I think it can be really helpful for people. It's really helpful for me at the least to understand how other people are going through things. Because like you said, it's the shadow work, or as you called it, working in the dark, is important. That sounds like reflection and just taking the time on your own to do some of the work. But also, and this is a big thing that's come up in lots of different scenarios, is the power of community and the power of connection for whether you want to call it healing or for growth or for reflection. It sounds like that was a piece of your 2-year rediscovery of John Witzing that really got you there, because I kind of wonder, we won't know the answer, but I'm kind of curious to see what would have happened if you didn't get on that fat bike that day and discover that. It might be right. Like
the story turns out to,
yeah.
I think I think the story does turn out differently, right? Like I do think you have to surround yourself with the people who know you best in those early days. For sure, that was definitely a key part of it. And through this process over 2 years, that definition of community has really become more succinct, because I know the people that are truly that are true friends in my life, right? Like I know who they are and I know who they are not.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But a few years ago, I couldn't tell you that, right? When shit goes sideways in your life, the people that are with you through the shit are the people that are really for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes those phone calls come from places that you don't even expect them to come from. So there was a few surprises out there, but like ultimately I really defined like who is the community that I can at least be vulnerable with.
Yeah.
And thank God to everyone that listened, including yourself. It's like, it's pretty tough to be the person on the receiving end of, holy shit, my friend has just gone through this major crisis and I don't know what to say. Like that's a tough position to step into. Thankfully, for everyone that's a part of this journey, nobody who's in that inner circle ever like shied away from offering me whatever they could give me at that particular time.
Yeah.
It's a tough position to be in as a friend. And it's not lost on me that without that, things just like the locked and loaded challenge of it takes a lot of different things to happen for it to go right. It's just like this scenario. There's a lot of different things that needed to happen for me to get to where I am today. Yeah.
I kind of wonder, dude. I'm two things. So the first thing that comes up is, number one, if you're on the receiving end of like, okay, this my friend or my family member or this person that's close to me is going through this hard shit. Like that's partly what I mean about vulnerability. Like it takes vulnerability to get to connection. That's my thought. Maybe it's a really well-known thing and I'm just hobbling on old, evidence. But to me, that's this, that's the next layer or the next deepening layer of a relationship is when someone is vulnerable, because it takes that initial step without knowing what the other person is going to think, say, or feel in order to do that. So there's a lot of uncertainty in that. It's like, here's my shit. I know I've trusted you in the past. Okay, now what? So I think the initial vulnerability is key. If you can do that, and you did that in a lot of ways, it sounds like there's lots of examples throughout like the last 2 years is kind of what we're talking about, that you're able to do that.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to say, like, great job with that, because that is, I would actually say that, you know, the other end of that is also very difficult, being the vulnerable one, and especially being, we can only speak on behalf of being men and growing up in a similar society where, and then also your job, right? Can I name your job, or is it?
Yeah, you can name it.
Yeah, so professional, what do you want to call it? No, so yeah, you work in law enforcement. I'm gonna say especially that as well. I would say more often than not, there's not a whole lot of vulnerability there. Sounds a lot like put your, you know, put your fucking straight face on and just do it, man. And yeah, you're gonna burn out, but I don't know. We'll see. If you get there, we'll address it. So yeah, that's key. But here's my question to you, and I don't know the answer, but you know, we're talking about power of community, and you had these long-term friends, or these friends at least that had deep connections with you. What do you think someone would do if they didn't have some deep connections, whether they didn't have, you know, family members that were close, or friends that were close, and not even proximity wise, but they didn't have deep connections with people? Because I know there's people listening that may not have anyone.
Yeah, that's a really good question, man. I think you have to build a community for sure if you don't have one. But I think the only way to do that is by throwing yourself into things that you love. So obviously, a part of my story begins with I already had a community of individuals that cared for me enough to be there for me in the worst part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I can say that other than one individual at Skydive Toronto, I knew nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the communities that I threw myself back into was skydiving, but I went to a completely different drop zone where I knew no one and had all these goals. And being somebody new that steps onto a drop zone that has all these goals can be a little bit of like a, well, who the fuck are you?
Right.
Right. So there's a bit of like showing up, doing the work, proving that you're ready to take those steps, and developing these relationships with people. And because of my particular story, you know, because of the job that I have and because of the particular story I have, there's certain spin-off effects from all of this that were negative. And so it would be easy for anyone to find the negative side of this out there in the media landscape. And there were people that had.
Right.
And so, you know, that automatically sets up, you know, the thought process that people are going to judge you. But you need to do the work to weed out that mentality and really focus on living within a community and showing up and doing the best that you can do in the environment that you're in. That's why I always go back to this three simple things: mindset, attitude, actions. Honestly, my mantra throughout this entire process has always been mindset, attitude, actions. There's very few things that we actually control in our lifetime. Like in my particular case, the process is the process because of the job that I have and because of the type of shit that was brought about in my life intentionally by this other person. I couldn't control the process. I had to essentially resign myself to the idea that there's just things I can't control. In fact, I'm still in the weeds as we talk today. I still have shit that's still not resolved as a result of the things that this individual did that had dire consequences and will have dire consequences to my financial future in that realm for quite some time. But I can't control that. And I've divorced myself from the idea that it really doesn't matter what I say or do in that world, because of who I am in that world. Things are just going to naturally unfold the way they see fit because they have their own agenda and their own political system of beliefs that they're going to invoke in this particular situation. So be it. I can't spend my energy worrying about that. What should I do? I should focus on the mindset and the attitude that I choose to show up with in the day and the actions that I intentionally seek out to take. Those things I can control. Can't control that other stuff, but I can absolutely control those three things. And every time I went back to that, good things always happened. Good things manifested. People in the community of skydiving saw me for who I am. I'm happy to say that I'm in a relationship now. And imagine throwing yourself back into the dating pool with the story that you're very aware of the story hanging over my head, and throwing yourself back into the dating pool and trying to convince a potential partner that, oh, no, I'm really not that guy. Right. Well, I couldn't worry about what other people were going to think. I could only show up as who I am, the actions I take. So in every scenario, it manifested that when you focus on putting yourself in the environments that you want to be, and you take the steps to have a positive mindset, positive attitude, and take positive intentional actions towards the things that you're working towards, you start to build a community around you. I have an amazing partner who's an incredible human being, who's nothing like anybody I've ever been with in my life, that has no drama, who has her own shit together, and it just works. It's just a good relationship. It just works. We understand each other. We have phenomenal communication. We talk about everything. We hardly use one of these things.
Yeah.
It's not superficial. It's let's have coffee and talk. Let's have breakfast and talk. Let's make food and talk. Let's go do a workout and talk. It's a true relationship. It's the kind of thing that I didn't actually know existed. So it's phenomenal. My skydiving community, it's the same thing. It's a phenomenal group of people who are brothers and sisters that I love to be around, that know me for who I am, regardless of the shit that happened around me. They know who I am. They see the positive investment that I make to other skydivers on the drop zone. We have a ton of fun together and we do some great things. And then obviously, you know, the community that I have with my own friends, the people who really know me, nothing's changed. If anything, I think our relationships are stronger.
Yeah.
So,
man, that's great.
So my advice is, So my advice ultimately to somebody who doesn't have a community is basically step out of your comfort zone and find the community you want to be a part of, and just show up with that positive mindset and attitude and take those actions.
Yeah, dude, I think that's great. I'm going to be framing those words. There's a spot here, right here, little picture frame. I'm going to put those right below Sorrel.
I love it, buddy.
I like that, man. That's good.
That's so good, dude.
I'm not just blowing smoke, but
no, I know you're not. I actually had a question about you because, believe it or not, I had a bunch of questions down on paper for you as we were planning this podcast. I was like, well, there's questions I have for Josh.
No worries, man. What do you got?
Well, because on that whole mindset, attitude, and actions piece, one of the things that I reflected on a lot over the last couple of years is something that you specifically say when we're training, which is easy. Right?
Yeah.
Your language is, you use the word easy, like that was easy, or yeah, that was easy, eh? Like So I'm curious, like I've always been curious. I think I was then, but I'm even more curious now. Like, what do you see the role of self-talk playing in your ability to overcome the adversities that you faced in your own life?
Man, I'm getting jacked up just thinking about it. Honestly. Oh man. I just gotta say, first off, there's been a lot of I'm going to be launching an ebook, and just like how you and I are communicating, we're both in each other's, because we're both part of this kind of shit. So, rewiring the attic concrete wall principle, like these are things that I know like lend itself to one of us or both. So the concept and sort of the sensations of motivation and inspiration I've been thinking about these things a lot. For me, I have, there's lots of examples where I've been inspired or motivated by other people or other things. And there's lots of examples. And I still use some of those to this day, whether it's listening to a podcast or listening to a song or seeing something visual or this tap. Like, remember we talked about that? I remember using that before on a run, and I just started fucking flying. Or like, it's crazy, man. The effects sometimes, it's like, it's not physical at all, man. It's like fitness is barely physical, I think. Like, I want to say it's probably 95% mental. Like, it's just way up there. It's almost all of it, right? Whether it's any of these like cues that we put in our environment to help us get into a desired mindset faster, I have felt from experience that the longer lasting motivation or inspiration comes from within. And it's when, so this isn't totally answering your question, but it's along the lines. For me, it's when I do something fucking hard and I achieve it, and then I reflect on it and I say, I just did this. See, like, you just did this. I'm you. Like, look at, this is self-talk. This is me talking to me. Like, we just did this. So there's lots of examples that I write about this in the ebook, different examples. The locked and loaded is one of them. Another example is when I went out to get the top trainer at Good Life Fitness. It's a short moment, man. It's a short moment, but the lead up is great. It's a lot of work and a lot of obsessive thinking. It's not balance, it's obsession, 100%. I've reflected on that very recently and realized that it was 100% obsession. But I don't know if I could have got there if I wasn't obsessed. I also know that there were certain things in my life, such as the relationship I was in. That was one of the worst relationships I was in, because I don't even know that I was tuned into much of it. There's a separate sort of idea brewing that we can kind of set aside, and that's like, is obsession take you out of the present? So I've kind of been thinking about that, because I've been reflecting on the things I'm really proud of, and knowing that there was a real like imbalance because of those things. And it was because I got so obsessive about certain things that certain things had to fall by the wayside for, I'm not sure the reason. But in order to get that like desired deep inspiration, and by the way, like, when you're asking me, this is me getting fired up right now, is me thinking about my own stuff, right? Like, me thinking about me. And it's just setting the goals, getting yourself into a position where you can set huge fucking goals and then actually achieve them, in some way achieve them. And then you can kind of ride off that shit. I don't mean coast, but like, you can't be doing like, I don't know. For me, it's it takes time to work up to a goal. So it's not as if you're crushing these huge goals every single day where you're just like boom, 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 like drilling shit off. You set these big enough goals that it takes a long time to work up to them, some longer than others. And once you achieve that, like, I think you need to achieve it in order to build up some self-confidence. And then in that self-esteem is where the self-talk comes in. And back to your kind of original thing of like easy, when I used to say that a lot, it was I think there's two different sides of self-talk. There's positive and there's negative. Positive self-talk is easy, right? It's like the fucking like John, that was fucking easy, man. This is easy. And it's when you're in the deepest trenches of pain, right, that you are experiencing. Whereas the negative self-talk, I feel like that there's a lot of resistance and a lot of sort of oppression with that type of thing. This is just my thoughts. Where generally people that aren't able to achieve things have more negative self-talk. Whereas the people that are able to, achieve things and feel elevated or, are soaring or inspirational, their self-talk game is fucking crazy. Like, it's like they have that personal coach in their head, like tapping and being like, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. It's not like, you piece of shit, you can't do this. Why aren't you doing that? And I know that's the reality because I train people, and, you're going to get into this. You already know this, man. You're an athlete. You've already talked to tons and tons of people. And my sort of thoughts are, the positive self-talk is important. It's hard to develop, but it's important, and it takes a while. And you need to have moments where you've worked hard for something, whatever it is. I just gave an example of something business related and then something physical and mental. And both of those things I can think back to, and like, there's certainly times where I'll think back to those and be like, dude, you're insane. Like, no problem.
Is that where, like, I could tell you spent a lot of time thinking about this particular area. So is that where you're better than you think comes from?
Yeah. What I'm realizing now is a lot of what I put out into, social media now, because I'm living in a different province and people don't really know me. So I have to really be putting out content for people to know I exist, and for people to know I'm a trainer and that I do train and that I have clients and that I'm working towards these things. So you're better than you think you are is 100% me saying that to myself, but learning that that statement for me is likely, because I'm working on this as of yesterday. We had a men's group where actually the leader brought up essentially vision or purpose. So we were spitballing this, and I'm pretty sure that will be something along the lines of that will be the sort of motto or mantra, as you sort of talked about with mindset, attitude, actions. That is where it came from. Like you, man, like, this, but there's something about finding pleasure and putting yourself in situations where you're suffering. I mean, hence the tattoo. I get questioned on this a lot. Obviously, it's pretty bold. I'm not sure I know the answer to it, man. I'm not sure if I struggle with having a full grasp, and I may never know whether suffering is okay to put yourself into, or if it's purely a negative association.
It's funny because that is actually one of my questions on I have a list here. That's actually one of my questions. Like, if you've come to any sort of conclusion that intentionally putting yourself into those things is beneficial, like, should people do it?
And you're just saying hard shit in general, just doing tough stuff.
Just doing tough stuff. Like, is it something that we should intentionally seek?
I think for me, man, it makes me feel alive, like it does. Right. And I know for you it does too. Well,
100%.
we heard a story. You and the bike. You're riding up a hill, man. I know that wasn't a coast, right? Like you're on a fat bike. They're so inconvenient to ride. They're so heavy. They're not meant for speed. You're up a hill, a long hill. You're in Canmore. There's another story I'll bring up after about you on a bike that just is a good elevating story, literally and figuratively. I think it's important to put yourself in hard shit. Yeah, I do. For me and for guys like you and me, and for women, for whoever. Yeah, I think it is important.
What have you learned from being a father? Like, how has that changed you and evolved your philosophies on how men should be tackling life?
So for me, this is where shadow work has come in huge, because having a son, and you have two daughters, and I'm sure there's lots of moments where you reflect a lot, and it's a real big mirror that gets sort of flashed at you really intensely. So for me, one of the things, I've learned is that yelling around kids is fucking brutal. And I'm someone who yells a lot. Swearing is one thing, but I'm someone who has a hard time not yelling. So when I get to states where it's where I'm, stimulated, my nervous system is zinging, and there's different triggers for that. But that's one of the go-to things for me. And a lot of the thing, it's sort of a blanket. I'll yell because I'm uncomfortable with how I'm feeling. It could be anger. It could mean that I'm not feeling safe. It could mean that I'm feeling anxious. It could mean, like, a host. It's pretty complex, the nervous system. So for me, the biggest takeaway is that yelling around your kid or your kids, it has the same nervous system response as fighting, like fist fighting in front of them. So that's one thing for me. And I actually made a vow. So this is a really personal thing, but I think that that's okay to share. And that's, I've written on a cue card a vow I have to Sorrel, who's my son. It's something along the lines of, this is really important for me, that that I'm going to really try my best not to yell around you. And if I do, I'm going to very quickly and swiftly own up to that fault and try to immediately reconcile that for you. And that is for those reasons. So there's a lot of ownership, and that's one of the hardest things for me, for being a dad and having a son. Some of the other things that are not as challenging to think about are the kind of like building resiliency piece in young kids. And I mean, Sorrel's just about 2, so we'll kind of see what he's like when he's older, but at least how both his mom and I share this ideal is that we believe in order to build resiliency, you need to have, so this is actually a big conversation in what we're talking about, because you have the Resiliency Blueprint, right? Or the playbook.
That's
Resiliency
right.
Playbook.
The playbook. Yeah, Resiliency Playbook.
I was looking at that earlier. So, we're talking about a toddler. What we have learned and what we agree on is that in order for a young person such as a toddler to become resilient, they need to feel safe, and they need to feel acknowledged. There may be some other components to that too, but an example is Sorrel happens to be a real fearless kid, man. And I don't know that he's seeing, his mother and I just like do a bunch of crazy stuff, jump, like, I'm not a super ballsy guy, so he's not seeing a lot of examples of like, whoa, look at my mom and look at my dad. We're fit. We do fairly normal stuff around him, right?
Yeah.
But he's fairly fearless. Like he at a young age, he would run to the edge of the staircase and then stop. And he'll run to the edge of a pool and stop. You know, there's certain times where, you know, he falls into the pool, but we're right there.
Yeah.
Or there's times where he'll climb up he has this thing we got him called a pickler. I have no idea why the name's called a pickler. It's like a A-frame ladder with spindles and you can climb it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And he was doing this thing where, and again, I never prompted him or showed him this, or neither did his mom, but he will climb to the top and then take his hands off, and then as he's falling back, he'll look back. And I'm like, you friggin' little daredevil, man. Like yeah. I'm like, he's gonna be skydiving when he's 4.
It's obvious. It's obvious.
So
Hawking,
you know,
Hawking proximity dives off Squamish.
Yeah. Peace.
Get him some wingsuit.
Siri came up when I said peace. Siri, get out. Yeah, peace out, Siri. I didn't even say Siri. Now I did. But so that's my thought, man. I think that's probably come up a little bit from, you know, experimenting and like living, being a parent, and also just from, you know, resources like therapists, and we read a lot of books and share lots of links and stuff like that with sort of like alternative parenting.
Yeah.
That's at least the stage we're in now with parenting. But I know as he gets a little older, I think it's going to be not pushing him into doing things. So not pushing my ideals on him, you know, to be a really mentally tough person, or to try to do any of the stuff that I think makes me a person. I think so. Not pushing those things on him, but providing him with lots of opportunities, and then just supporting him and challenging him.
Yeah. Dude, I wrote down the personal vow that you made to Sorrel, the cue card. I just want to say, like, man, that's phenomenal. Not just an idea, but like the self-reflection that you've had on that particular piece and the level of insight that you've brought to the consequences of that type of environment that he may be subjected to if you are in a state where you're yelling. That is, man, it's mind-blowing. That I love that. So thank you for sharing that, brother. That's really good.
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah. Thanks for asking that question. It's nice to be able to share that, because it's something that I'm proud of, and something that I was not proud of at one point too. Mm-hmm. But working on it, I feel really good about that. Like that seems like a really productive, good, you know, move in the right direction in every possible angle.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is for as long as I've known you, I would not have said you're the kind of guy that would yell, because my experience being around you is that you're always even keel, right? So
yeah,
I just learned something about you that I didn't know, but I also have learned like your answer to the thing that you wanted to work on, which I think is phenomenal. So
yeah. You know what, man? I think
Broski
with the puck. I think part of the reason that we don't know these things about each other, and this could be more of like a global thing too, not just like John and Josh, but like I think some of the time we don't know certain things about friends maybe, or people in our life. Like clearly there's lots of examples or reasons you can think of, but the reason I'm thinking of is, you know, you and I sort of met on the context that we had this like platform or discipline or playground to really like test and to like you know, face these things. So it's almost like we would bring these things from our life into this thing, and then we would process it at that. So I think the reason why you didn't know that, or the reason that we don't know these things about each other, is because, you know, there's number one, you need to have those outlets. But if you're only at the outlet, you're not at the input part of it, right? It's sort of, I don't know. I'm just sort of
I know that
speaking on
makes
that.
sense. Yeah, I know that
Yeah.
makes sense. You know, it's very true. Because I think a lot of, you know, I mean, I won't put words in your mouth. I'll ask you the question. Like, was it surprise to you that things ended, that things turned out the way they were in my previous situation? Like, could you have seen that coming?
Could I have saw that coming? I don't know that I could have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think if I could have, I probably would have been the kind of person to tell you versus like letting you just figure it out and go through all the pain. Right?
Thanks, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
I ask it because it's like, I think it talks to your point. It's like, we can't always be at the input level of what's going on in our friends' lives. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a very valid observation. I often wonder, it's like, well, was this obvious to other people in my life?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is no, it wasn't obvious, because it just seemed like everything on the surface was like good. And I certainly made it out to be like everything was good.
Right.
But in the hindsight, looking back on that period of my life, it's like, there are so many like little examples of like, oh, I should have paid attention here. I should have paid attention here. I should have paid attention here. Like, there was enough like little signs along the way where someone was trying to make me pay attention to the clues that were being left, and I just ignored all of them. So again, that speaks a lot about myself. So yeah. I haven't physically written anything on a cue card in terms of like vows, but I have that mental framework in my head of vows that, again, are just non-negotiables. If they were to exist, they would be automatically removed from my life. So
yeah, as you were telling your expressing yourself, that seemed really clear to me. Like, you use the words mindset, attitude, actions. Nothing gets in this house. You're like, this is my core, and anything that happens is sort of out of that. Like, it's not, I'm going to do the best I can to, like, stealing Under Armour, but protect this house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, fuck that, man. I'm using that. Like, that's what, right? Especially when you have kids, like, that's your kin, like you're the protector. So you got to know yourself, which I think is huge that you did that work. In a lot of ways, it sounds like you did that, Val. That mindset, attitude, actions is huge.
Can I tell you another cool story that you'll get jazzed up about? I don't think I ever sent you the photo, but I should send you the photo. I'll find it on my camera roll.
Yeah, man.
So do you remember when I came and did the combine day with you up at house?
Yep.
I bought a t-shirt that day. I bought one of the house t-shirts. It was a white one.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you remember that?
I worked out in that t-shirt almost every fucking day from that point onward, doing the type of workouts that I created for P110. And you wore it all through P110. That shirt is completely stained with dirt, soil. It's yellow. It's gross. It's disgusting. And I wore it all the fucking time. And I stared at that line of like one common collective all the time. And that was sort of like a different way of speaking the language I have about protecting the house. It's like, I looked at that thing every day, and I know people who saw me working in that t-shirt were disgusted with it because it looks so gross, but I was so proud of that t-shirt because I put everything that I was experiencing inside of me came out in the sweat and the soil and the dirt that's all over that fucking thing. I need to frame that t-shirt and put it on the wall, man.
Yeah, that honestly, that does seem like the kind of thing that's a real good story and like memento.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude,
I don't know if I'll put it in this this new Airbnb space that I've created here, but
yeah, dude.
I might put it in my office.
Yeah, man. No, that's dope, man. So that's homage to Drew as well. I can't remember who came up with that. I don't think it was me. I think it might have been him. But so good expression. This is the thing, man. Like you and I know this, but I put out this I think my best content is when I don't plan it, I'm just talking. So and I'm like, oh,
Yes,
fuck
absolutely.
that was a good idea. I'm like, I love what I said. That's so true. I actually believe what I said. And it's not always true, right? Sometimes you're just talking shit, or I do anyway, half the time. But I put out this like thing about like these are the different ways these are the different ways I get motivated. And it was meant to be like, try some of this shit out. It's all free, it's all simple stuff that you have access to. And one of the things was you're looking at this expression, and I'm curious to ask you this because you and I, collectively and separate, have come up with different principles that we, utilize or reflect on, or have just developed from reflection itself. Certain words that get you prompted for like action, like to be a fucking badass.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get into the nitty gritty on maybe the question is, what in your life do you have set up, whether it's music, words, expressions, feelings, people, pictures, environments, places, smells, anything somatic, whatever the fuck it is. Do you have anything that you can say like this thing gets me fired up when this happens, or when I'm in this moment?
Oh yeah, buddy. That's there's so many levels to that one.
Yeah.
Oh fuck, dude.
I got to timestamp this because this is going to be an ebook chapter.
Oh, buddy. Fuck. This is yeah, I've got so many things. So of course I have music, and then I have visceral senses, and I have
what's the music? Get into it though.
So music. Why? Okay. This is gonna. I have to pull up the phone because
do it.
This will be a shout out to Corcoran as well, because he fucking hates it when he doesn't really hate it, but like he always jokes with me. He's like, you go ahead and put on your rage music. So
gotcha. He's a big hip fan when he works out, eh?
Yeah, he's like, all those boxer dudes, they have their I don't know, like it's like they come into like this like funky type of music. He's got like this funky kind of stuff he plays when we're like doing pad work. I'm like, bro. So
rage, man. What do we got on there?
Okay,
dude, I read Miley Cyrus on there.
Yeah, Miley Cyrus on there. That's because of my kid, but this will get
what?
My kid likes rage until it's Miley Cyrus.
Oh, dude. So there's some rap on there for sure. DMX, Tupac.
Yeah. So I'll read to you who's on here. Minus the Miley Cyrus, because like that's definitely
kids.
Addition to have kids. But yeah, so DMX, Tupac, NF, Meza, Drake, Eminem, Designer, which is Panda. Yeah. Panda. Rage Against the Machine, obviously.
Yeah.
Multiple times. Kanye West, Linkin Park, more Machine Gun Kelly, the Hollywood Undead, Metallica, Chili Peppers, Biting Elbows, Smashing Pumpkins, Sum 41, Cypress Hill, Nine Inch Nails, Little Biggie, Fall Out Boy. Yeah,
you got a lot of good stuff on there.
Yeah, so like so music is definitely, so there's basically like a number of mixes I have. So that's one. There's another mix here that I created. That's called Him and I. So Him and I being like Him and I is actually like the statement of like, I'm looking in a mirror.
Yeah.
So it's Him and I, right?
Yeah, I got you on that one.
I thought you might.
It's about time, buddy.
Yeah, it's about time, buddy. So on this one, I have Motley Crew, some more rap, like people that I just like you know what it is? It's never the lyrics for me.
Oh, really? That's good. That's good to know.
Yeah. It's always the
beat and the pulse and the rhythm and shit.
Yeah, like Rage. I don't even know what they're saying half the fucking time.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, killing in the name of, it's like, what does it even mean? I don't even know. Like, I have never actually looked at the lyrics.
Yeah.
But I like, right. But I like how the combination is put together.
Yeah.
So him and I is very much similar to that. So music is a big thing, but then, outside of that, I also, how the fuck did I put this back together?
Dude, I have no idea.
I got this new case, and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. Oh, that's how you do it. There you go.
No tape on it, eh? Yeah, I don't know that.
Yeah, I know. I got this new phone. I had to get my kids to tell me how to put it together.
Yeah, seriously.
They're like, Dad, how old are you? Well, old enough to know that I don't know how to put that together.
Old enough to ask for help.
Right? So like, music is a big thing. And so I wish I could bring my new partner into this show, because she would actually have a better way of like describing how I change when I put on a music that gets me jacked up.
Yeah.
There's been times where we've been going out to a trail system around here, and I don't want to talk in the car. Yeah. I just put the music, right? Yeah. I'm putting the music on because I'm getting into the mood.
Yeah.
And so every time I have done one of those situations where the music on, she'll tell me afterwards, because I'll say, oh, like, I just killed that run. Like, I just did da 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 da. She's like, I knew it was going to be a good day because I could tell the way you were getting into the groove of the car.
Yeah. That's
so
okay.
So music.
What else you got? Part. What else you got? Specifics.
Words. So the word I always say to myself. So I don't know if you still say easy to yourself. Again, being the guy that never says a lot of stuff vocally.
Yeah.
The word I always say to myself, and it's more of like a visualization. It's like I could see the word is unstoppable, unstoppable, unstoppable. Nice. That's the word. I've been using that word in that visualization since I was, running track in
school. Yeah.
So unstoppable. I used to have this training journal in university when I was running track, and on the front of the training journal, I just had the word unstoppable. And so whenever I'm doing something that's really, really fucking tough, I just see this word and I speak it into my mind. Unstoppable, 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 unstoppable. That's all I'm thinking. Unstoppable.
Dude. Yeah. This is positive though. This is positive self-talk. Like we have these positive things in, so that when you're there, you're like, yeah, let's fucking do this. Like,
let's fucking do this.
But it's not negative. There's nothing in here that's negative self-talk yet. So what else do you have? You have this word unstoppable that you picture at times. You have certain music. It seems a little bit more general. Like, you have these playlists that pump you up.
Yeah, they are specific playlists I've developed for like different situations. As much as this is going to sound like totally like it's not going to appeal to everybody, but like I have a Christian play mix. So like when I go for some of the most inspiring runs I have, sometimes I'm listening to Christian, just worship music. I'm just out there fucking running to worship, man. Set of shifts, and on Sunday was a day shift. And so on day shift, I'm waking up at 3:30, getting to the gym, doing a workout before shift, before I'm on duty. And I ran a 10K run to worship. It was a Sunday. It was worship. It was just like, away we go, man.
Sort of fit, whatever.
Just kind of fit, right? It's just like we're rolling.
Yeah.
So word-wise, it isn't so much a word as it is a behavior. So some of the most difficult things I've had to overcome, such as finally getting my ass into frozen water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. you know how long I've refused to do that one. And
Yeah.
so when I went to Virginia to see Paul and Jesse and Silas, I had no choice. It was his camp. He was doing this fucking thing where we had to get into the water. And I literally woke up in the morning. I said to Paul, I'm like, there's fucking ice on this pond. Like we were out there breaking the ice up. And he's like, oh, this is going to be so good. I'm like, you're sick. You're just like Josh. It's like, this is sick. I don't know. Like between you, Craig, and Paul, it's like, why would you do this? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I knew there was like a confrontation coming where I had to put myself in it. And I was in that like negative self-talk of like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do this. I even said that to Paul at one point. I'm like, fuck, I don't think I can do this. And so the only way I was able to get in was I had to like mentally block out. It's almost like I had to go into like almost like a coma of sorts, where I just intentionally put my mind to block out whatever it is I'm doing for that brief moment. So he has a brief video on his Wild Recreational Fitness page where you see me going into this thing and I'm just like, I'm totally fucking zoned out. I'm completely in the zone. It's like if the switch that goes on when I'm riding the fat bike got me back into the zone, is like a key that turns the opposite way to do something like that.
Oh man, that's really interesting. I'd love to have a like athletic psychologist on talking about that, because I'm sure these are normal, like fairly common things that we're talking about that are used, right?
They must be. They have
Tactics.
to be. I can't believe. I wouldn't believe that I'm the only person that's ever done that.
Yeah.
But honestly, that is the only way I got into that water that day. Because you know my level of fear with cold water. I was like, fuck this shit. And then I did it again last winter as a part of Project 110. I intentionally put myself back into the cold water. And I'm like, it doesn't get any easier.
No, it doesn't, man. It doesn't. No, it's one of those things, man. It really doesn't get easier. And I've done it like thousands of times. It's not, there's different parts to it. But here, I want to reflect on something that you said, that this is confirmation bias. So I'm going to use it. You were saying that you set this. So you said in Project 110, which is 110 days straight of workouts and or challenges.
Yes, exactly.
A mix. And I know, like, I really know how uncomfortable cold water was for you. And I've jumped in cold water with a handful of people, and you've been by far the most like, dude, I'm not doing that. Like, this is a serious fear, right? So I'm just picking this up as yes, you've done it, but like we're saying, it doesn't matter if you've done it once, man. It's like new day blank slate every friggin' time you jump in cold water. It's like, it doesn't really matter that you've done it before. It's weird. But what I want to say is, it sounds like in Project 110, you anticipated, or you spoke this into whatever existence, or you maybe told someone that you were going to do it. So you have large goal, you then achieve goal, and then you reflect on that. And it's like, see?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's where I think you get the kahunas, man, versus someone else setting a goal for you, right? Or for anyone, and then you achieving that. That's awesome. Like, that stuff is sick. But I think where the real internal gear, like chugging along of like, I can fucking do this, comes when like you set the goal and like you achieve it and you reflect on it, and you can think back to those moments where you're like, I did this. I had help or community or whatever, but I was the one that did it.
Yeah.
And you were the one to do that.
Yeah, it definitely manifested itself because I intentionally chose to do it, versus a scenario where Paul was forcing me to do it. It was like, there was a lot of resistance. a lot of resistance, man.
Paul, let go of me, man. Get off of me.
Literally. And that guy is just as crazy as you are, man, because he fucking waded into that thing like it was like a warm hot bath. I was like,
Oh, dude.
between him and knowing the picture of you at Bear Mountain sitting in the tub, I'm like,
Oh,
come
yeah.
on, guys.
Yeah.
Like,
Grow
come
up,
on.
guys.
Grow up, guys. Like, we're all adults here.
Yeah. It's cold water. Big deal.
This is a big deal. Yeah. It became
Yeah,
a
dude.
really interesting thing when I started going for runs and then stopping by the convenience store every couple of days to buy ice bags to throw into the tub.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I had Tosh chirping me last year because I posted a couple of the photos. He's like, man, that's not a tub, that's a puddle. Fill it all the way up.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, dude, I'm sending you my water bills then, Tosh. Like,
Yeah,
can't be doing that shit.
It's like, it'll be more expensive because we pay through the nose for everything here.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Dude, that's why part of the reason is I never wanted to number one, I always liked cold water. And I say I like it because it's so hard, right? You learn to like what's really hard. It's kind of the suffer mentality. So sort of to your point again of asking that question. Once you discover something that's hard, you just have to do it once. And then there's a little bit of like, see, just do that. Like, okay.
Here's the other little thing I'll tell you is I always have mad respect for you, Craig, and Paul for doing these things. But do you know who else I have mad respect for because they do it in a incy wincy bikini? Is Alex Thompson. She does her May jump out at Trent into the water. I'm like, the first time I saw that photo, I was like, what in the actual fuck are you doing? Like, because she doesn't like cold water either.
Yeah, she hates it, man. Yeah, she's one of those people that would definitely tell you they don't like it. Whereas I wouldn't tell you that. RJ wouldn't tell you that. Craig wouldn't tell you that he dislikes anything.
No, he just do it.
Yeah,
that guy's made out of different material though. So
yeah, Kevlar. I got cheap plastic on me. These bits are okay. Fuck.
Yeah, man. I've only had a fat coffee, athletic greens, and my element tea here today. So
jeez, man.
I'm doing your fucking 21-hour fast or something.
Oh yeah, that's a long fast too, eh?
Yeah, because with shift work, I always try to. So the way I have evolved things is I don't eat past midnight. So regardless. So like on day shift, I don't eat past basically 7:00, but I actually stop eating around 5:30 because I go to bed early so I can wake up to work out. But on night shift, I don't eat past midnight. And I eat my biggest meal like as breakfast, basically.
Right.
And then, you know what I mean? Like I rewire it that way so that at midnight, I'm having the lightest thing, which usually ends up being athletic greens. But because I worked my last night shift last night, I had my last I had athletic greens. That's actually what I had just before midnight. So I had my last real food was at about 10:00. So all I've had is athletic greens, fat coffee, athletic greens, element tea. That's where we're at right now at 5:40. And my energy level is still really high. So
yeah, there's something to fasting, dude, for sure, eh? In terms of even just an energy standpoint.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like I could go for a run right now or do a workout and it wouldn't bother me whatsoever.
Yeah.
So
fasting's underutilized it's just, it's a little uncomfortable at first.
Yeah. I think everything I learned in the Locked and Loaded that you exposed me to and through you, through Paul, through Ian, like all that stuff has actually like morphed over the last couple of years. So much more dialed in. I was watching your 7 tips to getting shredded there the other day. I was like, yeah, that's why I was like, oh, the reference to the fasting. It makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, you're already doing all those things, or most of them anyway. Those are things that most of us do if you're lean.
Yeah, absolutely. Like at 46, I think I've figured out a few of the lessons to like stay in the kind of shape that I'm in. But it's like,
Mhm.
you know, those are the things you got to stay disciplined with if you want to like have that kind of athletic performance and have that fit frame and just be able to do the stuff that you want to do. So,
Yeah.
all right, buddy. The question I have for you, man, because we started this episode off with me talking about locked and loaded, and I almost want to bring it back to that experience. And before we went on the recording, I was showing you the image of you on my TV screen with head in hand, side of the side of the treadmill. And so, you know, I think I always look at that shot because I think it's a pretty poignant moment in that experience where you're obviously in a very contemplative state. And I don't know if you remember what you were thinking at that particular time, but really I wonder, what are the things that you have taken away from that experience that have surfaced in your life over the last couple of years that you couldn't have known at the time, but are now prevalent in the learnings that you apply going forward?
That's a good question. So the major thing I decided, so the first thing I learned when I came out of the shipping container was that I wanted to have kids or a kid. That was the first thing I said to Bree was, yeah, I'm ready to be, you know, I think I'm ready for this. I want this. And I wasn't sure before then. And that's manifested into, you know, having a child. So Sorrel's almost 2.
That's amazing.
And yeah, up until that moment, dude, I didn't know. And I remember I had a conversation with my dad a couple weeks before the event. And I remember this clear as day because I was like, well, how did you know you wanted to have kids, right? Because he's had 5. I'm one of 5. And you know, he said his reasons, and then I said, well, how do you think I'm gonna know? He's like, just think about it when you're in the container.
That's
And I was like, okay. So, and then I did, man. And it was like, when you have 24 hours of, you know, meditative aloneness and darkness with no stimulation, and you have the intention to think about something, you know, you take action on that. And I was fortunate enough to actually have a conclusion on that. One of the other biggest takeaways I have had from that are, you know what, it's actually more of a coaching tool. So it's not, it's something I used, and it was something directly from Tosh. And you probably remember this. This is during the preemptive night before, like the gathering, the collective of, you know, this is what's going to go down tomorrow. Here's some last minute thoughts. And I remember one thing he said was, when you're in, paraphrased, he's like, when you're in those points of struggle, he's like, just ask yourself, am I doing okay?
Yeah.
Right. You remember that?
I totally remember that, man. Getting goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah, like it jacks you up, right? So fuck, man, this is the thing. When you do the hard shit and you can reflect back on it, you get so jacked up from yourself. Like it's got to be a little bit important, at least, to do hard shit so that you can use that as, see. So I probably said that, I don't know, I probably asked myself that like hundreds of times in there, maybe, right, over that period. But I also know that it's been a really great tool for clients when we're in hard situations, and the context is workouts. When I say that, right, preemptively say, if you get to this point, just ask yourself if you're okay. Don't tell yourself you're okay. Don't ignore feelings. Don't try to be someone you're not. You're simply asking that. And what I learned is that there's never been a time where I've asked myself that and I answered, no, I'm not okay, and I need to evacuate. Or so in most of our, in anything that I've lived, I bet if I asked that question, that would have been enough to sort of recenter me and to get myself thinking, a little bit more rationally and less sympathetic nervous system driven. So that's one. I think of this sometimes, and that's man, I don't know. I've ran 80K. I'm like, that's sweet. Like simple truth of that, you know, you and I ran within like a 0.1 of a kilometer or something stupid.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I'm like, the thing about that is like, you know, setting big goals is, I like it. You know, I guess big, huge goals are not for everyone, but I truly, and I know you do too, like, because we've been a part of these big goals together, a lot of these big goals. And it just brings so much excitement if you can settle on a goal that like something that really fires you up. And if you can be with people that fire you up collectively with that goal, like you and I had a lot of fun. There was a lot of hard shit too to working towards that goal, a lot of mixed shit. Yeah. But like anytime I think about that, I just think of the shit that fired me up.
Absolutely.
Right.
That is a key point. The hard shit with the right people is always fun. Like, yes, there's hard shit, but like we've had a ton of fun. And so, yeah, sometimes I feel bad because a lot of the things I might say to the current day are just inside jokes that only exist because of the shit that we've done together. And people are like, huh? I'm like, don't worry about it. It's like, it's okay.
Yeah, dude, don't. I'm not going to get into it. Yeah. I will say though, did you have any other questions or do you feel good with that?
Yeah, I feel good with that, man. That was a burning question for me when I came into this. I wanted to know like where you are today in relation to the things that you took out of that. So
yeah, there's going to be a part 2 to this for sure.
100% there will be.
I'm jacked up that you're going to be a coach or that you're putting yourself in a position to be a coach. And I'm not going to end this podcast with like the classic, like, where can people find you? I'll post about it. I'm going to post whatever you want me to post, like that main link tree or whatever. But dude, I'm stoked to have talked to you. And this is like I feel really inspired actually right now. I can say that. I feel really good. I feel very connected to you. And I feel like that was a really authentic conversation. So thank you for that.
Thank you, my brother.
Yeah, man.
The feelings are mutual, man. Fuck, I wish I was out in Victoria. That we could go like crush a big run or something right now.
Yeah, dude.
Or grab some of those Home Depot pails that you made and
shit, man.
That was so good, dude.